Egghead is the best post time skip arc. Take it to the bank. Take it to the bank. I'm out of here. Just kidding. What's going on, everybody? It's Patrick from Obscure Reference, and today we're doing a very special arc review. And by special, I mean we're just going to talk about what we liked and didn't like about the Egghead arc. If you're unfamiliar, this is with relation to the series One Piece. The latest arc just ended as of a week ago. Whether or not that's official remains to be seen. This next chapter could be jumping back to it just briefly. But for the moment, I'm just kind of assuming that we're done with the arc, and so we are going to talk about it. And I've lost my document. Give me a second. But right off the bat, I think conceptually, this was a fantastic arc. Here we go. It's a really, as the start of the final saga, it has a lot to live up to and has a lot of promises that it has to make as well. And I think this arc kind of balances that. We have a lot of big reveals, like we finally meet Vegapunk, and he's awesome. And we also have a million other questions, like what the heck are bloodline elements? We're learning more about the nature of devil fruits. We're also, seeing the Gorosei in their true forms for the first time. What does that mean for the series, and how do we beat that? Uh, just conceptually, there's a lot of really cool stuff at play here. Introducing future tech and more Joy Boy lore and Emmett himself. Like, there's a lot of really cool stuff to break down here. But this isn't really a breakdown or a deep critical analysis. This is more of a let me gush about an arc I really like for the next 10, 15 minutes, and then throw in some stuff I didn't like. So one thing I do want to point out, and this was pointed out to me by a Reddit post. Let me see if I can pull it up. On the One Piece subreddit, this was posted by user Pringles underscore. Just go on to the One Piece Reddit and just search Sabaody or Egghead. But essentially, the point that this user is making is that this arc mirrors Sabaody. Um, and he provides some compelling evidence. Right off the bat, you know, this one's a little bit of a stretch, but Kid and Law are introduced in Sabaody, and they're also annihilated in Egghead. Luffy is too weak to save anyone in Sabaody, whereas in Egghead he saves everyone but one person, even though technically he kind of saves Vegapunk. There's a lot of really cool stuff in there. I'm just going to throw that in as a fun little thing. Whether or not Oda intended that remains to be seen. I wouldn't really put it past him. I feel like he does some of this stuff pretty frequently. Um, I think it works just from a positional standpoint, where Sabaody was the beginning of the last saga in the pre-time skip era. This is the beginning of the last saga post-time skip. So whether or not it was unintentional, it's a neat connection to be made there. You can do whatever you want with that. He's got a lot more examples. So again, I'll have a link probably in a pinned comment or something if you want to check that out. But I really appreciated that, and again, some of them are stretches to be sure. And whether or not this means that Jay Garcia Saturn's going to have a 2-year training arc, I don't know. Um, but anyway, but yeah, just from a conceptual standpoint, positioning in the story is super interesting. Uh, but the story structure, let's talk about the story structure, because while I do like it a lot, I think Oda's really experimenting here. I do also have a little bit of an issue with it. This is officially, because like I don't want to count Wano, but Egghead isn't separated into acts like Wano was. But we felt pretty free to jump around to the world at different points, and I think those all serve to the larger themes of what Egghead was all about. So it works here, and this is the first arc we've really done that, like concretely. Like, this is a part of Egghead. This is happening at the same time Luffy's doing all that, and I really like that. I think the cutaways for Shanks and Kid, Law and Blackbeard, and Garp versus Kuzan were all very interesting. And again, I'll serve larger, setting up stuff for the end of the story, while also in the terms of Kuzan and Garp setting up or establishing more the themes of what this arc means. Um, we also this is I'm kind of rambling a little bit. I'm trying not to. I have a structure here, but the main concept of this arc, or not the concept, the main goal of this arc is what I'll say is we're on this island. Now let's go. And we're not gonna stay here. We're not gonna like investigate or do anything. We're talking to Vegapunk, and he's like, "I requisitioned our ship. Let's get out of here." And things just kind of snowball from there. So the entire time, the only thing we're trying to do on this island is to get the heck off of it. And I think that's a really fun concept. Whereas I legitimately can't think of another arc where Oda's done that, and it's just fun that this late in the game, he's still experimenting and trying different things with his story structures. We also see that through the way where he brings back the who done it, like who's the traitor, which one of us is the traitor, kind of a thing, and and I have a little bit of a problem with this only because we've been burned by it before. I'm someone who's read My Hero Academia, and I think that plot was not handled very well over there up until it was resolved. Then that kind of redeemed it a little bit. But the twist, we also are just coming out of Wano, where we had Kandro reveal himself as a traitor. And while, again, that one was handled better than My Hero, it was still super, like, delayed. And the whole mystery in this arc was resolved within a few chapters. But reading weekly, it was kind of like, are we really doing this again? I do think it'll benefit much more on a rewatch or a reread. Case in point, I've been catching up on the anime because I want to see the Garp fight, and this plot gets brought up and then is resolved within like 3 or 4 episodes. So yeah, it flows much better when you're not reading it weekly. Though I will say, reading it weekly, people were able to point out just who it was pretty much the week before that York was revealed to be the traitor. So there's something to be said about the clues all being out there and being able to solve it yourself. So got to shout out Oda for that. Um, yeah, and yeah, honestly, the the point of this arc, I think, while establishing some important themes that are represented through Bonnie, through Kuma, through Luffy, it's also serving to put pieces in certain places on the board and draw battle lines, essentially, if you will. And we're basically, this is really, it's really hard to define this as a setup arc because so much happens in this, but it really is a lot of setup. We have huge story beats, like Shanks annihilates Kid. We have Blackbeard destroying Lost Crew. We also have the reveal of the Gorosei. We don't deal with them, but we know they're a threat and a big one at that. Um, so all these big story beats are happening, but there's still like we're getting answers, we're getting questions as well. For example, this is the big arc where Kuma and his story is really coming to a head. Like we've been wondering about this guy since right around Skypiea, like legitimately. He's been in the story for, let me see if I can get the math right. Alabasta was like 200, so yeah, probably a little after that. So that would be, it's been almost 20 years probably since Kuma was first revealed, and his mystery's only gotten deeper. We saw him at Thriller Bark, we saw him at Sabaody, we saw him at the at Marineford, like slowly becoming less and less human. And this puts it all into perspective. This explains all of it to you, while also revealing that hey, he's also Bonnie's dad. You know, not biologically, and it's a whole thing. And we get his flashback, and we get the full story on who Kuma is and why that matters. And not only does it serve the themes of this arc in general, but it also is answering a question that we've had for almost 20 years. Same thing with revealing Vegapunk, and at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, you're the smartest guy on Earth, but also you're starting to research the Void Century, and you're looking into what makes a Devil Fruit a Devil Fruit. So yeah, we get an answer. This is who Vegapunk is, but by himself, he introduces so many new questions. Um, let's see here. So yeah, and all that is in this picture, but we also have room for what I'm gonna quote as fan service because it's something that my little heart enjoys. Like we see the return of CP0, and I don't think it's for nothing. I think there is a larger purpose to including CP0 in this arc, namely Stussy, but also I think having Lucci and Kaku witness just what the Gorosei are capable of and what their bond with Stussy means for where they are in the story, especially Kaku. When he lets her go towards the end of the arc. But even just having like quick moments where Luffy and Lucci are teaming up against one of the Seraphim against Esper, I believe, and Zoro and Kaku teaming up against S-Hawk. Like, was that necessary? Not, maybe not, maybe not. But seeing them do a tandem attack like that was so much fun. It's just, it's two characters that I love deeply for different reasons. Like Lucci's just an asshole and a bastard, but seeing him team up with Luffy, it's like, yeah, it's like action figures kind of meshing together. It's kind of why I like the Marvel movies. But it's yeah, largely it's largely fan service. I feel like, but I think there is room in there for Lucci and Kaku to maybe eventually turn and join the good side against the world government. But we'll see. So that brings us to the larger themes of this arc. Like I mentioned before, I think this is really the arc where battle lines are starting to be drawn. Like for example, Kuzan's doubling down and throwing his lot in with the Blackbeard pirates. Kobe, despite no, not even despite, after being freed from the Blackbeard pirates and learning just what the one getting the One Piece will entail, it vows to go up against Luffy's dream. And of course, Lilith, aka Vegapunk, is now firmly opposed to the world government. We also have Kuma and Bonnie now on more or less on our side, and seeing where things fall with Kid and Law, whether or not they're still going to be a part of the picture. I imagine Law will be, just because we see Beppo save him. Jury's still out on Kid. I have no idea what's up with him. Um, but when he comes back, I think they're both out of contention for the One Piece for sure. But I do think Law will still be on our side. I think mostly because he's just such a popular character, you know. But we also have the bigger theme of freedom and what makes you human, which we can break down a little bit as we go through it. But um, it's largely represented through Bonnie's character arc, through Kuma, especially Kuma and his flashback. As he becomes less and less human, there's still one driving factor that takes him from Kamabaka Kingdom to Mary Joa to Egghead, and that's his love for Bonnie. And that's something that shouldn't be possible. That's something that goes against all of his programming, all of what makes him a cyborg, a pacifista. It brings him back to Egghead, and it makes him not makes him. He chooses freely to wallop J. Garcia Saturn, and it's a really beautiful thing, and seeing that. And learning Bonnie as a character is super interesting. I think she's very much the focal point of what this arc is trying to do. Her and Kuma, I should say, in their relationship. She kind of gets disheartened after she learns the backstory of Kuma and learns everything, and then Jay Garcia shows up, and she's super bitter and angry against him, of course. But she's not able to hurt him, and it's through Luffy coming in and showing him, hey, I'm here. He doesn't say this. He doesn't really address it. Really, he's like, I'm Joy Boy, and she's like, oh, okay, and seeing her dad be okay, quote unquote okay. He's kind of on the rough side of things for sure, but having Luffy be there and encouraging her is super. It brings her back in a sense, and through love and through joy and freedom, she's able to join Luffy, and they're able to do. We essentially have two Joy Boys, essentially. Um, I said essentially twice there. Let me say it like five more times so you get the point. I do think that it's really a beautiful thing to see what Oda's able to do with Bonnie here. I don't want to say she's one of my favorite of the worst generation, but she's certainly climbed up the ranks, for sure. Um, but kind of leading away from that, I think the larger theme of living things having a free will of their own, I think, is largely applicable to the rest of this arc, and not just Kuma. We see it with Stussy when she decides to turn against CP0. Largely, it's because Shaka is like, "Hey, we need your help," and she has a love for Vegapunk because technically he created her. We have that. We have Boa S Snake, sorry, turning against her programming because she falls in love with Luffy, and that's a bit of a stretch and questionable, quite honestly, because she's a kid. But for being honest, the actual Boa is age different. The age difference between the actual Boa Hancock and Luffy is also a little odd, but I digress. Um, we also see it with Garp going against Navy commands and going straight to Full Lead Island to take on the Blackbeard Pirates to save Kobe. It's his love for his apprentice that brings him there. Um, and he does it freely, and he does it with a big smile on his face, even after he's defeated. We also see it. I'm trying to think if there's one more. I think, yeah, I don't. I'm trying to think. There's probably one more I'm forgetting. The antithesis to all of this is Kizaru. He doesn't act on that. He doesn't turn on his higher ups. He doesn't follow that love to help his friend, and that's why Stella gets stabbed by him. That's why you see him crying at the end of the arc, talking to Akainu, saying, "Don't talk to me. Have you ever had to kill your best friend before?" Oh, Sentomaru is a great example too. Turning against orders and stuff to protect Punk. So yeah, there's another good example for that. But Kizaru's on the other side of that, where he's left by himself at the end of this arc, and he's just in tears because of what he's done. So I think that's a huge, major point of this arc, and it's super fitting because we're on the future island, Egghead. We're on an island full of machines where things shouldn't be able to act against their programming, and yet we have multiple examples here, and it's a lot of it is driven by love, and it's just a further point for the larger themes of the story, which is freedom. People should be able to live how they want, you know, freely. So I really, really, really like that. Let's see. I have a point here talking about how much I like Vegapunk. I feel like I've established that. I like his design. I like all of his satellites. I think it's super interesting how it's kind of like a mashup between Pain from Naruto, where they all share same hive mind, but also they're different personalities that personify a different aspect of Vegapunk's personality, kind of like the homunculi from Full Metal Alchemist. So I appreciated that. Yeah, I did touch on Kuma's flashback as well. It's easily one of my favorites. I think by the time I recorded my favorite flashbacks from One Piece, that was on the list. That was one of the first panels post time skip. Since I've caught up, since I've been reading weekly over the last 10 years, so since about Punk Hazard probably, or Dressrosa, that was the first panel. I forget what chapter it is, but it's the one where Vegapunk's finally operating on Kuma, and man, I can't really talk about it because it will make me cry. And he's like talking about how people call him a tyrant or an asshole, and Vegapunk's like, no one who knew you would actually say that, and he's crying while he's starting the operation. It's a beautiful scene. It's a beautiful moment, despite the horrors that are about to ensue. So yeah, I already touched on the admirals. I think everything they're doing with admirals, both present and former admirals, is incredible. I think the bonds that Akainu is starting to form, or already has, between himself, Fujitora, Green Bull, and I see Ryukyugi. That's his name. Forgot his actual name. I'm so used to calling him Green Bull. But between him and the current admirals, especially Kizaru, in this arc, are on full display here. And it's super interesting having him deal with all this. He's such a fascinating character. I'm so ready to dive more into who he is and where he's at. So yeah, that's gonna be all I've got for the positives. As you can tell, I'm gushing a lot, so I really like this arc. But this isn't without its negatives. I do think, again, this has been a larger problem post time skip. The Straw Hats do feel pretty secondary to everything that's happening. Yes, they're in the middle of the storm. Yes, they're the ones that are the cause, more or less. Not, they're not even the cause of this. No, they're not. They just happen to be caught up in it, and that's fine. But they also don't really get to do much, I don't think, post the Who Done It Among Us plotline, which is a shame because Frankie was on Baltigo, the childhood home of Vegapunk, and he gets to gush for like maybe a chapter or two, and then the rest he's like helping out here and there. I think he tries to get some hits on Jay Garcia, and it's like, I want more from them. They feel like, and they're not. I know that. I've been reading One Piece for years. They almost feel like static characters at this point, where nothing's really been pushing them to change or grow, which is a falsehood because yeah, Zoro and Sanji last arc were able to change, in Whole Cake Island that's nothing but character growth for Sanji. Um, so here it just kind of feels like there's second fill to everything else that's happening, which there's a lot of other stuff happening. Don't get me wrong, and as we get to the larger scheme of things here, as we wrap up this final saga, yeah, they're probably gonna have to take a back seat here and there. But that's just a shame because I really like the Straw Hats. I think most of us love the Straw Hats, and we're only this far in the story because we love them. Uh, but I also understand, there's a lot you got to balance with that. But I don't know. They were able to do it with, Sabaody. They were able to do it with Thriller Bark. There's plenty of arcs centered on the Straw Hats where they're all able to do their own thing and grow as characters. I just don't feel like we've gotten that post time skip in general, aside from Whole Cake and Wano to an extent, but that's pretty generous, honestly. So again, that just remains a complaint of mine personally. Um, but I also feel like it, because even there's a fun factoid that I was thinking about the other day. Like this is the first arc where we all arrive on the island around the same time, and this is the first time we're all leaving the island at around the same time as well. And it's the first time we've done that since Punk Hazard. Because you remember, we went to Dressrosa, half the crew split off in the middle of that arc, and then they were split up until Wano, and that wasn't until like at the end of Act One, pretty much of Wano, or actually probably early in Act One. But point being, we haven't had the whole crew together for a whole arc since Punk Hazard, and it just kind of was like, maybe they'll do something. I don't know. It feels like as much as this calls back to Ohara, that Robin doesn't get a whole lot to do here, doesn't really have a lot to react to, which is weird because there's a Buster Call happening, and I know she's gotten over that because of what happened to Annie's lobby, but I don't know. It felt like there could have been more there. Um, and I did write down that Usopp maybe because he's also an inventor and probably obsessed with what Vegapunk's come up with, that maybe he could have had more to do here, but I think we're saving him for Elbaf, and that makes sense. Uh, let's see here. Yeah, Who Done It felt, while short, still felt like a swing and a miss. Not a big thing, honestly. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. The fact that we did get to cut to the chase so quickly, it honestly refreshing for someone who reads a lot of Shonen Jump manga. Um, and then the big thing, Vegapunk's speech really felt like padding. As someone who watched Dressrosa, that final fight weekly, yeah, it did a little bit. But reading Dressrosa weekly, reading Whole Cake Island weekly, it's like towards the end of those arcs, yeah, they all had stuff that's like, well, we just gotta last this long until we can do this thing, and it's like, well, we're doing that again here, and I don't love that. It's a trope that Oda has kind of fallen back on a couple of times post time skip, and it's not my favorite. That being said, rereading this, I think it'll go much more smoothly. I think the 10-minute wait wasn't like 10 chapters. I feel like it was more like a few chapters, and I'd have to go back and double check that. But I think it'll flow better when you're binging it rather than reading it weekly. So, as much as I've enjoyed reading this weekly, I think it'll read a lot better when you're just binge reading it. And that goes to Dressrosa and Whole Cake Island too. I think those last bits of padding in those arcs aren't nearly as bad when you're binge reading it. But honestly, those are really about it. Was really trying to come up with reasons to not like this arc as much as I do, and I couldn't. I just couldn't. This arc does a lot right, does very little wrong, and there's symptoms of where we are with One Piece 20, 24, 25 years later. So it's, again, minor stuff at the end of the day. I still think, no question, this is the best arc we've gotten post time skip. It doesn't top my list of favorite arcs. I think Water 7, Annie's Lobby, even Marineford potentially could top that. Um, but I think even if you go back to our tier list video, I don't remember if we ranked Egghead. I want to say we did, and that we put it pretty high. I think we put it at A tier, and depending on how it ended, it could have gone up to S tier. And honestly, I feel like it's definitely top of A tier, if not bottom of S tier. Like, this is a fantastic arc. Um, I think Oda is really, this is the beginning of the end, and it really feels like it. This is the part where he's able to start bringing all the pieces together and causing a big chemical reaction to make this final saga what it will be. So as we head towards Elbaf and we start looking ahead to the future and seeing what lies in wait for us, I think we have a really good start here. I think I have high expectations for Elbaf, and I'm not just saying that because they're giants. But I don't know. it's so weird because I totally expected this to be like a transitional arc, and to an extent, it is. Um, but it's also one of the longest arcs in One Piece, which is totally bizarre to me. And I think Elbaf, it, there's no way Elbaf's not longer than this. So whatever Oda was smoking when he said he was going to be done in 5 years, like 2 or 3 years ago, I gotta know what it is and I gotta try it. So yeah, that's really about all I've got to say about Egghead. I've been recording for 20-ish, 25 minutes. So we're going to wrap this up here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. What were your thoughts on the Egghead Island arc? What are you looking forward to most in Elbaf and the larger final saga in general? Um, what were some things that you really liked that I didn't touch on? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like. We're going to be talking about One Piece for the foreseeable future. We got some really cool stuff coming up. We got more One Piece with John whenever we take another break. We also have, we do chapter reviews and discussions for every new chapter. Yeah, we got a lot of good One Piece stuff if you're a fan of One Piece. Um, and just gaming stuff in general. We stream Mondays and Fridays, and we have some trailer movie reviews in between. So if you're all into that, maybe subscribe, maybe hit that notification bell. So yeah, that's gonna do it for me. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good day. Hey you. Yeah, you. Made it to the end of the video. Proud of you. You know what else you should do? You should hit that like and subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. Be sure to tune into our live streams. Check out some of these videos that I've put up here around me for you to check out and enjoy. That is all.